good? Very good. All right. Well, that was lovely, Kara and Peter. Thank you for having us here at Sprung Formal. It's wonderful to be included in this project. It's a beautiful magazine. I don't have any accordions on my magazine shelf. Now I do. Thanks a lot for that. I do love it. It's each fold is its own section. All right, I'm gonna break form and read 4 poems instead of just the one. I'm gonna start with a couple from the magazine in honor of the magazine. I love how magazines participate in the creation of my own manuscripts. Sometimes I don't know if a poem's any good until it's in a magazine, and then I read it and I go, hey, that's not that bad. And following Kara, I'm going to read this poem that I think it's a relationship poem called He Said, She Said. That I didn't think was any good until I saw it here. The sound of the wind hurrying dry leaves across the cul-de-sac could be mistaken for the patter of rain, the way we sometimes say the opposite of what we mean. When you said, I'm so glad you are my friend, in the middle of an intersection, what you meant was I'm not capable of being by myself. The sound of the wind raking oak leaves is too much for me. Let me slip my hand into your pocket. When I said I couldn't come, what I meant was if I came, I would never be allowed to leave. When you said, you're going to be fine, you're so talented, you'll meet other people, what you meant was, I'm afraid. I've never loved anyone the way you love me. I don't even love myself particularly. I don't deserve to be loved. The sound of a woodpecker head banging in the orchard could be mistaken for the downspout. That said, I don't know why I read so much in Yentai, why I got so upset when you all ganged up on me in Risk. Such a disheartening game, that Risk. So everybody's feelings always get hurt. All right, another poem that I rather like in this magazine, although I didn't think much of it before, is the last one in here, Blessing for an Old Dog. Which is an allusion to a James Wright poem called A Blessing, where he has this interaction with a horse and wants to reach out and touch it. I don't know if he actually does touch it in the poem, but he says, I would like to. And those 3 words I borrow, and of course the word blessing. But it's about a dog. Ever watchful, black-eyed, and black-jowled, and black jowls dangling. Have you gone blind looking for me at the gate, or resigned yourself to solitude? Will you see me on a spring morning and rather stay in the shade than mosey over to meet my hand? I would lower my hand over the twisted, rusty wires to smooth the patch of white fur on your forehead. We are connected. Can't be bothered to bark or get into arguments, abandoned each to his own, with only the other for company. We grow old. Let the yard go to the birds. I read that sentiment at the end there, abandoned each to his own, with only the other for company, and I just couldn't help but thinking about the lot of a poet. You know, poets are so often, I don't know, almost invisible and underrepresented and in the larger, more dominant culture, that it feels like we're abandoned sometimes. I think we all have that feeling as poets, and perhaps as artists as well, and we have only each other for company. So events like this mean the world to us, poets. to get to stand up here and read stuff that we wrote in private and embarrass everybody and be awkward and be so very awkward. Anyway, I have a couple of collections of poetry. I'm going to read one poem from each. This one's my newer one. It's called Father Me Again. And I'm going to read a poem in it called Voices. It has an epigraph from Rainer Maria Rilke. Not that you could endure God's voice, far from it, but listen to the voice of the wind and the ceaseless message that forms itself out of silence. Voices. When I listen to the voice of the wind instead of God's, I hear a hiss in the oak leaves, like rice pouring into an empty pot. It makes sense that I would be alone during the seizure in which I swallow my tongue, unable to call anyone to roll over my body, that I'd be alone during the eclipse and voiceless in the silence of swallows, flown home from the soybean fields, alone when my shadow rolls back into my body and a chill slips like black lace into the wind. All right, that was a stand-up poem from Father Me Again. This is my first collection. I designed the cover art using images of my own brain scans. I like to say that because it's kind of unique, but it's true. I have a glioblastoma, which is that's stage 4 brain cancer, brain tumor, and a 14.6 month life expectancy, which is also rather unique. But I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary. So that's 5 years old. September 2019, that's my 5-year anniversary. And that qualifies me as a long-term survivor. Right now I'm not long-term, but I will be. All right, so here's a poem from my first collection called Poe Poem, and it's about the experience of undergoing radiation. Because of the mask that molded to my face during the fitting, hardening as the warm water dried, the mask that fastened my head to the cot, and because of the cot that carried me into the machine, the beam that unloaded a single dose of radiation every morning, Monday through Friday, and because the techs left me alone in there to take my dose, closing the steel door behind them, while the robot arm rotated around my head, firing invisible shots of radiation. I wrote no poems. I had no thoughts. The radiologist said I would be dead within 2 years. Ravens decorated the ceiling panels. I read The Mask of the Red Death on rides to the Department of Radiology. Pulling down my stocking cap over my ears, I shaved my head, grew out my beard. For the first time in my life, I insisted on carving jack-o'-lanterns, clawing out the cold slime of their brains with my fingernails. That's all I'm gonna do. I brought my collections. If anybody's interested in I'll give you a good deal. So see me after.